It all began like a picture-perfect life, the kind of existence most people could only fantasize about. The mansion on the hill, the long driveway lined with perfectly trimmed trees, the garage filled with polished luxury cars, and the flawless smile of a man who believed he owned the world. His name was Daniel Moretti, a self-made millionaire who had clawed his way out of nothing and built an empire in the hotel business. People admired him, feared him, envied him. But no one envied him more than his wife, Elena, who, despite living beside him, often felt like she was standing on the outside of his glittering life, gazing in through the glass. Elena had married him for love. She had never cared for the money, the high society dinners, or the photographs in glossy magazines. To her, Daniel had been the man who made her laugh in college, the man who promised her forever, the man who swore he would take care of her until his last breath. She was carrying his child now, their first, and she believed that her love for him was not only still alive but growing. She had imagined him holding her hand during doctor's visits, smiling proudly as he felt the baby kick, whispering promises about the family they were about to become. But life has a cruel way of destroying the pictures we carry in our hearts. One rainy Tuesday evening, Elena came home to a silence that felt too heavy, too deliberate. The air in the mansion didn't hum with its usual sounds of staff moving about, of her husband's voice echoing from his office. Instead, there was a note on the dining room table, folded neatly, almost coldly. Her hands trembled as she picked it up, already sensing that whatever it contained would change her life forever. The words were short, clinical, and devastating. "I'm leaving. I've met someone else. She makes me happy. Don't try to reach me. I'll have my lawyers contact you." He hadn't even signed it with love, or with regret, or with any recognition of the woman he was abandoning. Just his name, like a signature on a business deal, as though their marriage had been nothing more than another transaction. At first, Elena thought it had to be a joke, some cruel prank or mistake. But then reality clawed its way in, ripping her apart. He wasn't home. His closet was half empty. The staff avoided her eyes. He was gone. The next morning, the truth exploded across social media and tabloids like wildfire. Photos surfaced of Daniel in a small-town diner, smiling across the counter at a young waitress. She was in her early 20s, with a plain blue uniform and an apron tied around her waist, her hair pulled into a simple ponytail. She wasn't glamorous, she wasn't rich, she wasn't from his world, and yet there he was, looking at her as though she were the only person in existence. The headlines were merciless. Millionaire leaves pregnant wife for waitress, from boardrooms to burgers, Daniel Moretti's shocking affair, wife left behind while lover serves coffee. The images burned themselves into Elena's mind, the waitress laughing, Daniel holding her hand, the two of them kissing in broad daylight like teenagers drunk on new love. Elena's phone rang endlessly with reporters, friends, even strangers wanting to know if the rumors were true. Her parents came to see her, their faces pale with shock and anger, but their words could not soothe her. She shut herself inside her bedroom, clutching her stomach as though her unborn child might slip away from the sheer weight of heartbreak. She cried until her eyes swelled, until her voice cracked, until there were no more tears left inside her. Nights became unbearable. She would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, asking herself how he could do this. How a man who had once sworn to love her could throw her aside so carelessly, especially now, when she was carrying his child. Her heart twisted with betrayal. Every memory of him became poisoned, the way he had touched her, the promises he had whispered, the plans they had made. She felt as though she had been living a lie, that the man she had loved had never really existed. And yet, in the darkest hours, when the loneliness crushed her, something inside her began to stir. At first, it was anger, raw and burning. Then it became resolve, sharp as glass. She realized she could not let him destroy her. Not now, not when another life depended on her. She wasn't just a wife anymore. She was a mother-to-be. And she would not raise her child in the shadow of humiliation and weakness. She remembered all the years she had spent supporting Daniel. She remembered the endless dinners where she had been the perfect hostess, the meetings where she had taken notes for him, the contracts she had organized, the files she had corrected when he was too careless to bother. She had been the quiet strength behind his empire, the one who kept his life polished while he basked in the spotlight. He thought she was weak, a pretty ornament who would crumble without him. But he had underestimated her. Elena began to replay in her mind every detail she knew about his business, the deals he had made, the shortcuts he had taken, the times he had bragged to her about cutting corners. She remembered where documents were stored, who his partners were, what secrets he had confessed in arrogance. And suddenly, she saw a path. A way to fight back. She didn't want revenge for the sake of revenge. She wanted justice. She wanted to secure her future, her child's future. And she wanted him to pay for underestimating her, for thinking he could discard her like yesterday's news. The world still saw her as the broken wife, humiliated and abandoned. The tabloids painted her as a tragic figure, left behind while her husband paraded his waitress like a trophy. Friends whispered that she would never recover, that she would raise her child alone while he lived happily ever after with his new love. But Elena knew something they didn't. She knew that Daniel had left himself vulnerable. He had trusted her too much, ignored her too long, and now, blinded by lust and arrogance, he would never see her coming. She started making calls, quiet at first, to lawyers she knew through friends of the family. She spoke softly, carefully, testing the waters. She collected information, she reviewed documents late at night, her desk piled with papers while her belly grew heavier. She didn't sleep much, but when she did, her dreams were no longer filled with Daniel's betrayal, they were filled with fire, with determination, with the image of walking away victorious. Every time she felt her baby kick, she felt stronger. It was as if her child was reminding her why she was fighting, why she couldn't afford to give up. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a woman on a mission, a mother protecting the future. The pain was still there, of course. Seeing Daniel's face in magazines, hearing whispers about his new life, it all cut deep. But with each passing day, the pain hardened into something else. Something powerful. She began to dress differently, no longer in the soft clothes of a grieving wife, but in sharper, bolder outfits. When she walked into her lawyer's office for the first official meeting, the staff looked up in surprise. Gone was the broken woman they had seen in the tabloids. In her place was someone calm, poised, with fire burning quietly in her eyes. She laid out the first pieces of evidence: contracts Daniel had signed without reading, assets he had left vulnerable, shares he had placed under her name out of convenience. She spoke clearly, methodically, as though every word was a step on a path she had been planning for years. Her lawyer listened, then leaned back, impressed. "You know," he said slowly, "you may have more power than you realize." And Elena smiled for the first time in weeks. A small smile, almost hidden. But it was there. What Daniel had done to her was unforgivable. But what he didn't know was that he hadn't destroyed her, he had awakened her. And soon, the man who thought he could leave his pregnant wife for a diner waitress would learn that betrayal has a price. The first court date arrived on a chilly morning that seemed to hang heavy with anticipation. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed like vultures, their microphones outstretched, cameras flashing as though this were the trial of the century. And in a way, it was. The world loved nothing more than the downfall of a powerful man, and Daniel Moretti's story had all the ingredients: wealth, betrayal, scandal, and now, a battle with the very woman he had abandoned. Elena stepped out of the black car slowly, her belly now showing beneath her fitted dress, her hand resting protectively on it. She wasn't dressed to blend into the background anymore. She had chosen her outfit carefully: sharp lines, bold colors, the look of a woman who was not afraid. The crowd erupted in questions, but she didn't flinch. Cameras caught her every step as she entered the courthouse, her heels clicking against the marble floor. To those watching, she was no longer the broken wife from the tabloids. She was the storm coming to reclaim what was hers. Daniel arrived minutes later, stepping out of his silver sports car with the waitress clinging to his arm. She looked out of place, her nervous smile faltering under the relentless barrage of flashing lights. Daniel, however, carried himself with arrogance, wearing a tailored suit and the smug confidence of a man who believed money could buy him immunity from consequences. He smirked as he passed by the reporters, his hand resting proudly on the young woman's back as though she were his prize. Inside the courtroom, the tension was thick. Elena sat beside her lawyer, calm but alert, her eyes never leaving Daniel's face. He avoided her gaze, focusing instead on the judge as though the woman he had once loved, the mother of his child, had become invisible. The waitress sat in the back, clearly overwhelmed, her wide eyes darting nervously around the room. The proceedings began, and with them came the unraveling of Daniel's empire. Elena's lawyer presented evidence after evidence, piece by piece dismantling the image of a flawless millionaire. There were contracts signed in haste, assets transferred without caution, investments that had been hidden but were now dragged into the light. Elena herself had provided much of it, her meticulous memory and quiet intelligence transforming into the sharpest weapons in her arsenal. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs as each revelation hit like a hammer. The once untouchable man was shown to be careless, reckless, blinded by his ego. His own arrogance had left doors unlocked, and Elena was now walking through each one with precision.